I booked that Airbnb because it was cheap and close to the small town I was visiting for work. I didn't really think much about it when I paid. I just needed a place to sleep, shower, and store my stuff. It had a few photos on the listing, nothing fancy. A small house with old furniture, an old backyard, and a messy driveway. The reviews were short and kind of rushed, but none were bad enough to scare me away. I figured it was just one of those older places nobody cared enough to fully clean or update. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was how quiet the area felt. There were houses around, but no people outside. No kids, no cars passing, no dogs barking. The air felt still and heavy. I pulled into the gravel driveway and dust rose around the car. The house looked older than the photos. The paint was chipped, the windows looked foggy, and the curtains inside were all closed even though it was still light outside. I got out of my car and grabbed my bag. The place smelled like damp wood before I even reached the door. The doorknob felt loose when I turned it. The inside was colder than outside, which felt strange because it wasn't even cold weather. The air inside smelled like old clothes mixed with something metallic. I walked slowly through the hallway, just looking around while my body adjusted to that weird cold silence. The living room had dusty shelves, a couch with a torn corner, and a coffee table with small scratches all over it like someone dragged sharp things across it repeatedly. The floor creaked under my feet. The house wasn't big, but it felt like every room had shadows hiding in the corners. There were no pictures on the walls, just empty hooks and faded spots where frames used to hang. I dropped my bag in the bedroom. The bed looked neat but old. The sheets felt rough like they had been washed too many times. The window in the room faced the backyard, which was just a long stretch of dark grass and some trees at the end. The backyard looked abandoned. No lights, no decorations, nothing. Just open darkness. I tried to relax. I made a simple meal in the small kitchen and sat at the table. The chair rocked slightly under me because one leg was uneven. I kept glancing around, trying to figure out why the place made me feel tense. It wasn't haunted looking. It wasn't dirty, but there was something off about it. Something I couldn't explain yet. When night came, the house started making noises. Not normal house noises either. More like soft movement. Slow dragging sounds above me, like someone was shifting boxes in the attic or walking without lifting their feet. At first I tried to ignore it. It was an old place. Old places make sounds. But it kept happening every few minutes. Sometimes it sounded like footsteps. Sometimes like something heavy being rolled across the floor above me. There was no attic in the listing, and I didn't see any stairs to one. I felt uneasy, but I told myself to sleep. I brushed my teeth, turned off the lights, and lay in bed. The room felt darker than normal darkness, like the shadows were thicker. My body felt tense. My eyes kept focusing on the window even though there was nothing out there but darkness. Just when I started drifting off, I heard something new, a soft tapping. Not constant, just slow and spaced apart. It sounded like someone tapping their fingernail against wood somewhere in the house. The sound kept going, one tap at a time, each one slightly louder than the last. My chest tightened and I stayed still, just listening. The tapping stopped after a few minutes, but I didn't relax. It was too strange. I finally fell asleep sometime after midnight. Around 3 a.m., I woke up without knowing why. My body just knew something felt wrong. The room was silent, but the air felt heavier than before. My breathing felt loud in the quiet space. I looked at the window again and noticed something I hadn't seen before. The curtains were slightly open, like just an inch or two. I was sure I had closed them completely. I stared at that small gap, and I felt a weird fear crawling under my skin. It wasn't about what might be outside. It was about the idea that someone had pulled the curtain while I slept. I forced myself to get up and close the curtain fully, then locked the bedroom door. I got back into bed, but I didn't sleep. I just waited. Later, maybe an hour passed. I heard something soft hit the floor outside my room. Something light, like paper or cloth falling. Then another faint dragging sound. That slow dragging I heard earlier in the house, but closer. I didn't move. My phone was next to me. I turned it on and checked the time again.
4:11 a.m.
The battery was low because I forgot to plug it in. I stayed awake until the sun finally came up. When it was morning, the house felt normal again. Still silent, still cold, but less threatening. I got dressed and walked out into the hallway. The air smelled slightly different, like someone had moved around while I slept. Then I noticed something right away. A pair of muddy footprints on the wooden floor. They started near the back door and stopped right in front of the bedroom door I locked. The footprints were small, not like a child's, but more like someone with narrow feet. The mud looked fresh. The back door was still locked when I checked it, and all the windows were closed. Seeing those footprints made everything click in my head in a terrifying way. The tapping, the dragging, the curtain being moved, none of it was random. Someone was inside that house while I slept, and they were quiet enough that I never actually saw them. I didn't pack calmly. I just grabbed everything quickly, barely checking if I forgot anything. As I was leaving, I noticed something else that made everything worse. In the living room, under the couch, a corner of a door was sticking out. A hidden trapdoor. Something the listing never mentioned. Something someone clearly used. I didn't open it. I walked out, locked the front door, got in my car, and drove away without looking back. I reported the listing, blocked the owner, and never got an answer from Airbnb about what was actually happening in that house. I still think about it sometimes. Not about the footprints or the noise, but about how long someone might have been living inside that hidden space before I arrived, and how close they stood to me while I slept. That part still bothers me the most. I booked the Airbnb because it was the cheapest place available near the lake I wanted to visit. The listing looked simple, nothing fancy. It showed a small cabin with a deck, a bedroom, a kitchen, and a living room. The photos looked old, like they were taken years ago, and the description was short. But I didn't care much. I just wanted a quiet place to stay for 2 nights and then leave. I didn't think anything bad about it because I had stayed in dozens of Airbnbs before, and nothing ever happened. When I arrived, the driveway was long and narrow, covered in loose stones. The trees on both sides of the driveway looked thick and close, almost like they were blocking the sunlight. When I reached the cabin, I noticed how isolated it was. There were no houses nearby, no cars, no signs of people. The cabin looked older than the pictures. The wooden porch had cracks and some boards looked soft. The windows were covered by thick curtains, and there was no sound except the wind moving through the trees. I stood there for a moment before going inside. The key was in a small metal lockbox attached to the railing. When I entered, the air smelled like dust and something faintly sour. The cabin wasn't dirty, but it wasn't fresh either. The floor creaked under every step I took, and the furniture looked like it hadn't been moved in years. The living room had a couch with worn-out cushions, a small coffee table, and an old TV mounted to the wall. The kitchen was small and basic. A refrigerator, a microwave, a few cabinets, and a sink with a rusted faucet. The bedroom was the only part that looked somewhat taken care of. The sheets looked newer than everything else, and the bed was neatly made. The window in the bedroom faced the woods, and the trees were so close it felt like someone could walk up and stare inside without me noticing. I planned to relax, eat, and go to sleep early since I was tired from driving. As soon as the sun started going down, the place felt different. The silence outside became heavier. I could hear the wind hitting the walls and roof harder. The cabin made small crackling noises like it was adjusting to the cold night air. While eating dinner, I kept noticing how every sound seemed louder than it should be. My fork against the plate, the microwave door closing, even my footsteps. Everything echoed through the cabin even though it was small. After I ate, I walked around the cabin again, just to get used to it. That's when I saw something odd. In the hallway near the bedroom, on the floor, there were scratch marks. They were long and thin, almost like someone dragged something sharp across the wood repeatedly. They were faint, but noticeable once you looked directly at them. I stared at them longer than I should have. Something about them bothered me, but I tried not to overthink it. I went to the bedroom, closed the door, and locked it. I didn't usually lock Airbnb bedroom doors, but something about being in that place made me want to. When I got into bed, I listened to the woods outside. It was quiet for a while, Then I heard leaves moving, like something or someone walking through them. It could have easily been an animal, but the footsteps, or whatever it was, moved slowly, not in the quick darting way animals usually move. The sound stayed for a few minutes and then stopped. After that, the cabin got quiet again, but I couldn't fall asleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, breathing slowly, trying to calm myself down. Eventually, I drifted off. Sometime around the middle of the night, I woke up suddenly. I didn't hear anything at first. I just had this strong feeling that something wasn't right. My body felt tense before my mind even fully woke. I stayed still, listening. First, there was nothing. Then I heard soft movement somewhere in the cabin. It wasn't footsteps this time. It sounded like something being dragged across the floor very slowly. The sound was light, almost careful, like someone trying not to make noise. My chest tightened and every muscle in my body felt frozen. The dragging sound continued for a while and then stopped. I waited, barely breathing. Then I heard something else. Breathing. Soft, slow breathing. Not mine. It sounded like it was coming from the hallway, right outside the bedroom door. The breathing didn't sound panicked or rushed. It sounded steady, like someone just quietly standing there. My heartbeat felt loud in my ears. I stared at the doorknob, expecting it to turn. Didn't. The breathing stayed for what felt like forever, then slowly faded away like whoever was out there walked farther down the hall. I didn't sleep after that. I stayed awake until sunlight finally came through the window. When it was morning, I slowly unlocked the door and stepped out. My hands were shaking. The cabin felt colder than before. When I looked down at the hallway floor, more scratch marks were there. Fresh ones. They were darker than the old ones and went all the way from the main door to the bedroom. I checked the front door. The lock was still in place, but the chain latch was undone. I knew for a fact I locked both before sleeping. Seeing that made everything real in a way that hit me hard. Someone had been inside while I was there, walking around the cabin in the dark. I didn't bother cleaning up or checking anything else. I just packed fast and got out. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting someone to step out from behind the trees. When I got in my car and started driving away, I felt this huge weight lift off me, like the cabin had been holding its breath the whole time I was inside it. Later that day, I reported the listing and told Airbnb someone had been inside the cabin while I slept. I never got a real explanation, just a refund and an apology message. I kept thinking about it afterward. The breathing, the scratches, the unlocked latch. The worst part wasn't that someone came in. It was the thought that whoever it was might have already been living there. Someone who knew how to move quietly, who listened, who watched, and who waited until the lights went out and the house got dark enough for them to walk freely. And I will never know how close they stood to me while I slept. I booked the Airbnb because I needed a quiet place to stay for a few days while traveling for work. Hotels were expensive, and this one looked simple but clean. The listing showed a small house outside of town, with a big field behind it and a forest in the distance. The photos weren't great, but nothing looked strange or alarming. The reviews were short, mostly saying things like nice stay or good price. Nothing that warned me. When I arrived, the house looked more worn than the photos. The paint on the outside walls was chipped and faded, and the windows looked cloudy like they hadn't been cleaned in years. The area around the house was silent. No neighbors nearby, no cars passing, just open space and trees. I liked quiet places normally, but something about how still everything was made me feel a little uneasy. The key was inside a small rusted lockbox near the front door. When I opened the door, there was a smell in the air that reminded me of old books and damp wood. The floors creaked when I stepped inside, and the house felt colder than outside, even though it wasn't cold weather. The living room had an old couch with flattened cushions and a coffee table covered in small scratches. A TV sat in the corner, dust covering the top of it. The kitchen looked outdated, with old wooden cabinets and a dirty window over the sink. The plates and cups in the cabinet didn't match, like they had been collected from random places. The bedroom had a double bed with clean-looking sheets, although everything else in the room looked old. The curtains were thick and dark, blocking out all sunlight. The closet door was slightly open when I walked in, and I noticed deep scratch marks along the bottom edge of it. Something about those marks bothered me, but I tried to ignore it. People scratched furniture accidentally. Maybe someone had a dog. I set my bag down and walked around the house more. There was a small hallway that led to a locked door. The listing didn't mention any locked rooms. I tried turning the knob again just to make sure I wasn't mistaken, but it didn't move. It felt solid, like someone didn't want that door opened. I tried to focus on normal things to calm myself down. I made something to eat and sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone. The house was quiet, but every few minutes I heard soft pops or random creaks from different walls. Old houses make noise, so I tried not to think much about it. But every time a noise happened, I caught myself stopping whatever I was doing and just listening. When the sun started going down, I noticed how fast the mood in the house changed. It got darker quickly, and with no nearby streetlights or houses, once night came, it felt like I was completely alone in the middle of nowhere. The silence wasn't peaceful. It felt heavy, like the house was holding its breath. After showering and brushing my teeth, I locked the front door and bedroom door, then got into bed. The house felt too quiet, and my mind kept focusing on little things, like the smell in the air, the scratches on the closet, and that locked door in the hallway. I turned off the light and tried to fall asleep. Sometime during the night, I woke up suddenly. I didn't know why at first. My eyes were open, but I stayed completely still. The room was dark except for a faint bit of moonlight slipping through the gap in the curtains. Then I heard it. Soft footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Not walking with normal steps, but sliding across the floor. My heart started pounding immediately. The steps weren't in my room. They were somewhere in the hallway. The bedroom door was closed and locked, but I still felt exposed, like someone knew I was awake. The footsteps stopped outside my door. The floorboard directly under the door made a small creak. I stayed frozen, barely breathing. After a few seconds, something touched the doorknob. I could hear the metal shift, like someone slowly tested it. The knob turned slightly, then stopped. The person on the other side didn't try to force it or continue twisting it. They just stayed there, silent. It felt like whoever was there was listening, waiting to see if I reacted or got out of bed. Minutes passed, but they felt much longer. I stared at the doorknob in the dark, expecting it to turn again, but it never moved. Eventually, the slow sliding footsteps started again, moving away from the door and back toward the hallway. I didn't sleep again. I kept my eyes open until I saw daylight coming through the curtains. When morning finally came and I felt brave enough to get up, I unlocked the door and stepped into the hallway. The house looked exactly the same as the night before except for one thing. A small piece of black tape stuck to the top corner of my bedroom door frame. It wasn't there when I arrived. Someone had placed it there, likely as a marker to see if the door opened during the night. My stomach dropped. That meant someone had been inside the house before I got there. Someone who didn't want me to know they were moving around. I checked the front door. Still locked. The windows were shut. But when I walked to the locked door down the hallway, I noticed something new. Fresh scratches around the keyhole. Not random scratches, focused ones. Like someone was trying to pick it open. I didn't wait around to figure out what was behind the door or who had been watching me while I slept. I packed everything fast, barely checking drawers or shelves, and walked straight to my car. My hands shook while I unlocked it. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the cabin getting smaller behind me. The curtains in the bedroom were now pulled completely open. Someone had been inside after I left. I reported the place later, explained what happened, but no one ever gave me answers. The listing disappeared a few days later. I still think about the tape on the door frame. Whoever put it there wasn't trying to scare me. They were checking if I left my room at night. And the most disturbing part is knowing they were comfortable enough to walk around the house while I slept only a few feet away, listening to every sound I made. I booked the Airbnb because I needed a break from the city. I wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere cheap, somewhere with space to think. The listing showed a small guest house behind someone's main home. The photos looked simple. A bed, a small kitchen, a bathroom, and a desk. Nothing fancy, The backyard had tall grass and an old wooden fence. There were only a few reviews, all short, and none of them complained about anything major. I didn't think much about it. I just needed somewhere to stay for 3 nights. When I pulled into the driveway, the main house looked normal but old. The paint was peeling, the porch sagged a little, and the windows had thick curtains covering them. The guest house was behind it, separated from the main house by a narrow walkway and a wooden gate. The grass around it looked like nobody cared for it. The air felt still and oddly quiet. The key was under a flower pot next to the door, just like the message said. When I unlocked the door and walked inside, the first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't strong, but it smelled like a mix of dust and something slightly rotten, like old food or damp carpet. The air inside felt heavy. The place was small. The kitchen and living area were one room with an old couch, a scratch table, and a fridge that hummed loudly. The bedroom was just big enough for a bed and a nightstand. The bathroom door barely closed because the wood near the bottom was swollen from water damage. I put my bag on the bed and walked around. The blinds were down over every window, and when I lifted one slightly, I realized the windows were covered by metal bars on the outside. That wasn't in the listing. It made me pause. I told myself maybe it was just a security thing. Some people did that. I tried to relax. I made something simple to eat and sat at the table. The silence in the guest house and the yard around it felt unnatural. No dogs, no birds, no cars, nothing. The only sound was the fridge humming, and even that seemed too loud for the little space. That night, I locked the door, closed the blinds tighter, and tried to sleep. The mattress was old and uneven. The sheets smelled washed but stale. I lay there with my eyes open, listening to the house settle and the faint sounds of insects outside. I eventually drifted off, but sometime in the night, I woke up suddenly. I didn't know why at first. Then I heard its soft, slow footsteps outside on the gravel walkway. They moved carefully, not fast, almost like someone didn't want me to hear. My heart started pounding. I stayed completely still and listened. The footsteps stopped near the bedroom window. I held my breath. The bars outside the window made me feel trapped instead of safe. For a long time, nothing happened. The person or whatever was out there didn't move. I didn't hear breathing. I didn't hear talking, just silence. Then slowly, the footsteps walked away. I didn't sleep again after that. I just waited for daylight. In the morning, I checked outside. The walkway had small rocks and dirt, and I could clearly see fresh footprints.
Bare footprints. No shoes.
The tracks led from the back fence to the side of the guest house and then disappeared around the corner. I followed them, but when I reached the side of the building, they stopped, like the person had simply vanished. I tried to calm myself. Maybe someone from the main house sleepwalked or came outside for something. Maybe it wasn't meant toward me. Still, something inside me stayed uneasy. I spent the next day mostly inside, working on my laptop and trying to distract myself. Around afternoon, I heard movement in the main house. Faint thumps, maybe footsteps, maybe furniture moving, but nobody ever came outside. The curtains in the windows facing me stayed closed. Later, when the sun began going down, I heard something near the fence, a low scraping sound, like wood dragging. I didn't go outside. I just stayed in the guest house and locked the door again. Night came quickly, and with it, the same unnerving silence. I turned off the lights and got into bed, hoping I was just tired and overthinking everything. Hours later, I woke up again. This time, the sound was closer. Someone was trying the front door handle. Not loudly, not like forced entry, just a slow turn like they were testing it. The metal clicked softly under their grip. I stared at the doorway, frozen. The footsteps were just outside. I could hear gravel shifting under their weight. They turned the handle again, firmer this time, then stopped. A few seconds passed. Then something slid under the door. Something thin, paper-like. The footsteps walked away. I waited at least an hour before getting out of bed. My hands shook as I reached for the piece of paper on the floor. It was a photograph, a picture of me, sleeping in the exact same bed I was in. Same blanket, same pillow, same position, same room. But the angle of the photo wasn't from the window or the hallway. It was taken from inside the room. My stomach dropped. My hands felt numb holding the picture. That meant someone had been in there before I arrived. Maybe while I slept. Maybe earlier. Maybe many times. I didn't pack neatly. I didn't check anything twice. I just grabbed what I could and left. When I walked past the main house, one of the curtains moved just slightly, like someone was watching. I didn't look long enough to see a face. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove away fast, checking the mirrors every few seconds. Hours later, when I finally felt far enough, I pulled over at a gas station and caught my breath. I reported the listing. I deleted the owner's messages. I blocked the number. The listing disappeared 2 days later. No explanation. No follow-up. Sometimes, when I'm trying to sleep, I still think about one thing. That picture. Whoever took it didn't use a zoom lens or shoot through the window. They stood right beside the bed, close enough to touch me. And the worst part is knowing I never heard them. I booked the Airbnb because I needed somewhere to stay while visiting a town for a small weekend road trip. Hotels were either full or way too expensive, so this was the only affordable option that wasn't miles away. The listing showed a basement apartment attached to a house. The photos were simple: small kitchen, bathroom, living area, and a single bedroom. Nothing fancy, but clean enough. The only odd thing was that all the windows were tiny and near the ceiling, like the kind you see in old basements. I didn't think too much about it. When I arrived, the house looked normal. A quiet neighborhood, houses spaced apart with large yards. The host wasn't outside or waiting. The message said I could enter through a separate side door that led directly down into the basement unit. The grass near the walkway was long, like no one trimmed it in weeks. The side door paint was chipped, and the metal handle felt cold even though the weather wasn't. The air smelled like wet dirt and old leaves. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. A narrow staircase led down, and the walls were plain white with a few cracks running along them. The light switch flickered once before staying on. The basement air felt heavy, colder than the outside, and it smelled like concrete mixed with mildew. At the bottom of the stairs was the living space. The furniture looked old and mismatched. A dull brown couch sat against the wall, and the cushions looked flat. There was a TV with dust on the screen and a small table near it. The floor was carpeted, but the carpet felt stiff under my shoes, like it hadn't been cleaned well. The kitchen was small: a microwave, a small fridge, a sink, and a two-burner stove. I opened the fridge. It hummed loudly, and there was a faint smell of old plastic inside. Nothing else. The bathroom was right next to the bedroom. When I opened the door, the mirror had small brown stains along the edges, and the shower curtain looked thin and cheap. The bedroom was the only part that seemed decent. The bed was made neatly with white sheets and a gray blanket. The mattress didn't sag, and there was a small lamp next to it. The small basement window in the room had bars on the outside. It made sense for a basement, but it still bothered me. After settling in, I sat on the couch and scrolled through my phone. I noticed how quiet the basement was. Too quiet. I couldn't hear anything from upstairs. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. It made me feel like I wasn't in someone's home, but somewhere separate and forgotten. As it got darker outside, I made something small to eat and then got ready for bed. When I turned off the lights and lay down, I stared into the dark room. The air felt colder. I wrapped the blanket around myself and tried to relax. Sometime after falling asleep, I woke up without knowing why. At first, I thought maybe I dreamed something, but then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, steady footsteps coming from upstairs. They weren't rushed or loud, just controlled, almost careful. The strange thing was I didn't remember hearing anyone earlier, not even when I arrived. The listing said the host lived upstairs, so maybe they had come home late. I tried to calm myself and forced my breathing to stay even. But the footsteps didn't move normally. They paced, back and forth, slow, repeating the same path again and again. After a few minutes, it stopped. I stared at the ceiling, waiting. Then I heard something else. A soft tapping sound. Not upstairs. from the basement side of the wall near the bedroom door. Slow, uneven taps, like someone lightly drumming their fingers. My whole body tensed. I listened harder. 3 taps. Silence. 2 taps. Silence. Then 1. I stayed frozen until the sound stopped. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep again. The next morning, I walked over to where I heard the tapping. The wall near the bedroom door had a long vertical crack I didn't notice before. The drywall around it looked chipped and rougher than the rest. When I went upstairs to leave for breakfast, I tried listening at the top of the stairs. The main house was silent.
No voices.
No movement. I didn't see a car outside that wasn't there before. When I came back later that day, the atmosphere felt different. The basement felt colder. The smell seemed stronger, like damp wood. That night, the noises came back. But worse. Around midnight, I woke up again. This time, the pacing upstairs was louder. Faster. Not the slow, careful movement from the night before. Almost like someone was frustrated or restless. Then it stopped suddenly. Silence. After maybe 30 seconds, I heard the soft tapping again. But this time, it wasn't from the wall. It was from inside the basement hallway outside the bedroom door.
Top, top, top.
Slow and deliberate. I stared at the door, barely breathing. The tapping continued, just once every few seconds. Not random, like the person or whatever knew I was awake. I didn't move. I just lay there, eyes wide open, waiting. After about a minute, the tapping stopped. I listened for movement, but there was nothing. Not footsteps, not breathing, nothing. I stayed awake until morning. As soon as there was light outside, I got up, packed my things fast, and walked into the hallway. When I looked at the floor outside my bedroom door, I noticed something new. Dust from the concrete floor had been disturbed, like someone dragged their fingers along it while crouching close to the ground. And there was something else. Small scratch marks near the bottom of the door frame. Not deep, but enough to notice. I didn't wait around to think about it. I grabbed everything, went upstairs, and left the key where I found it. When I walked to my car, I looked up at the main house windows. One curtain was slightly pulled back, like someone was watching. I got in the car and drove away, checking my mirrors constantly. When I finally reached somewhere busy, I parked and sat there shaking. Later, I looked up the listing again, maybe to convince myself I imagined everything. But it was gone, removed completely. No reviews, no address, nothing. Sometimes when I try to sleep now, I hear tapping sounds in the back of my head. Slow taps, the same rhythm. And the worst part isn't thinking someone tried to get into my room. It's knowing someone was already down there with me long before I heard them. I booked the Airbnb because I needed somewhere to stay while visiting a town for a small weekend road trip. Hotels were either full or way too expensive, so this was the only affordable option that wasn't miles away. The listing showed a basement apartment attached to a house. The photos were simple: small kitchen, bathroom, living area, and a single bedroom. Nothing fancy, but clean enough. The only odd thing was that all the windows were tiny and near the ceiling, like the kind you see in old basements. I didn't think too much about it. When I arrived, the house looked normal. A quiet neighborhood, houses spaced apart with large yards. The host wasn't outside or waiting. The message said I could enter through a separate side door that led directly down into the basement unit. The grass near the walkway was long, like no one trimmed it in weeks. The side door paint was chipped, and the metal handle felt cold even though the weather wasn't. The air smelled like wet dirt and old leaves. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. A narrow staircase led down, and the walls were plain white with a few cracks running along them. The light switch flickered once before staying on. The basement air felt heavy, colder than the outside, and it smelled like concrete mixed with mildew. At the bottom of the stairs was the living space. The furniture looked old and mismatched. A dull brown couch sat against the wall, and the cushions looked flat. There was a TV with dust on the screen and a small table near it. The floor was carpeted, but the carpet felt stiff under my shoes, like it hadn't been cleaned well. The kitchen was small: a microwave, a small fridge, a sink, and a 2-burner stove. I opened the fridge. It hummed loudly, and there was a faint smell of old plastic inside. Nothing else. The bathroom was right next to the bedroom. When I opened the door, the mirror had small brown stains along the edges, and the shower curtain looked thin and cheap. The bedroom was the only part that seemed decent. The bed was made neatly with white sheets and a gray blanket. The mattress didn't sag, and there was a small lamp next to it. The small basement window in the room had bars on the outside. It made sense for a basement, but it still bothered me. After settling in, I sat on the couch and scrolled through my phone. I noticed how quiet the basement was. Too quiet. I couldn't hear anything from upstairs. No footsteps, no voices, nothing. It made me feel like I wasn't in someone's home, but somewhere separate and forgotten. As it got darker outside, I made something small to eat and then got ready for bed. When I turned off the lights and lay down, I stared into the dark room. The air felt colder. I wrapped the blanket around myself and tried to relax. Sometime after falling asleep, I woke up without knowing why. At first, I thought maybe I dreamed something, but then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, steady footsteps coming from upstairs. They weren't rushed or loud, just controlled, almost careful. The strange thing was I didn't remember hearing anyone earlier, not even when I arrived. The listing said the host lived upstairs, so maybe they had come home late. I tried to calm myself and forced my breathing to stay even. But the footsteps didn't move normally. They paced, back and forth, slow, repeating the same path again and again. After a few minutes, it stopped. I stared at the ceiling, waiting. Then I heard something else. A soft tapping sound. Not upstairs. From the basement side of the wall near the bedroom door. Slow, uneven taps, like someone lightly drumming their fingers. My whole body tensed. I listened harder. 3 taps. Silence. 2 taps. Silence. Then 1. I stayed frozen until the sound stopped. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep again. The next morning, I walked over to where I heard the tapping. The wall near the bedroom door had a long vertical crack I didn't notice before. The drywall around it looked chipped and rougher than the rest. When I went upstairs to leave for breakfast, I tried listening at the top of the stairs. The main house was silent.
No voices.
No movement. I didn't see a car outside that wasn't there before. When I came back later that day, the atmosphere felt different. The basement felt colder. The smell seemed stronger, like damp wood. That night, the noises came back. But worse. Around midnight, I woke up again. This time, the pacing upstairs was louder. Faster. Not the slow, careful movement from the night before. Almost like someone was frustrated or restless. Then it stopped suddenly. Silence. After maybe 30 seconds, I heard the soft tapping again. But this time, it wasn't from the wall. It was from inside the basement hallway outside the bedroom door.
Top, top, top.
Slow and deliberate. I stared at the door, barely breathing. The tapping continued, just once every few seconds. Not random, like the person or whatever knew I was awake. I didn't move. I just lay there, eyes wide open, waiting. After about a minute, the tapping stopped. I listened for movement, but there was nothing. Not footsteps, not breathing, nothing. I stayed awake until morning. As soon as there was light outside, I got up, packed my things fast, and walked into the hallway. When I looked at the floor outside my bedroom door, I noticed something new. Dust from the concrete floor had been disturbed, like someone dragged their fingers along it while crouching close to the ground. And there was something else. Small scratch marks near the bottom of the door frame. Not deep, but enough to notice. I didn't wait around to think about it. I grabbed everything, went upstairs, and left the key where I found it. When I walked to my car, I looked up at the main house windows. One curtain was slightly pulled back, like someone was watching. I got in the car and drove away, checking my mirrors constantly. When I finally reached somewhere busy, I parked and sat there shaking. Later, I looked up the listing again, maybe to convince myself I imagined everything. But it was gone. Removed completely. No reviews. No address. Nothing. Sometimes when I try to sleep now, I hear tapping sounds in the back of my head. Slow taps. The same rhythm. And the worst part isn't thinking someone tried to get into my room. It's knowing someone was already down there with me long before I heard them. I booked the Airbnb because I wanted to save money during a short work trip. Everything in the city was too expensive, so I chose a small, older apartment on the edge of town. The pictures made it look simple but clean. White walls, a wooden floor, a small desk, and a balcony that faced a quiet street. There were only 3 reviews, all short, all saying it was fine for a night. I didn't think much about it. I just needed a place to sleep. I arrived in the early evening. The building looked a lot older than the photos made it seem. The paint outside was chipped, and the hallways smelled like old carpet and damp concrete. The elevator didn't work, so I had to climb 3 floors. The whole place felt empty, not abandoned, but quiet in a way that made me feel like no one else lived there. The apartment door was a dull brown color with scratches on the lower half, like something or someone had dragged something across it. Inside, the apartment was almost exactly like the photos. Almost. Everything looked the same, but the air felt stale, like no one had opened a window in weeks. The wooden floor creaked under my feet, and the balcony door had a long crack running down the glass that wasn't shown in the listing. The furniture looked old but functional. I dropped my bag on the bed and walked around to get used to the space. The bathroom door stuck when I opened it, and the mirror had a small crack on the bottom corner. The shower curtain was stained slightly yellow near the edges. None of it was terrible, but it felt careless, like someone had cleaned just enough to pass, but not enough to feel comfortable. I went out to get food, came back, and ate at the desk. The building was so quiet that every little sound I made felt loud. The fridge hummed, the floor creaked, the pipes in the bathroom made random groaning noises. I told myself old buildings just sound like that. When it got dark, the street outside became almost completely silent. The few streetlights flickered every few seconds, making the shadows move in a way that felt unnatural. The balcony faced an empty lot covered in weeds, and behind that was a line of old garages with metal doors. From the balcony, the whole place felt isolated, like I was far away from anything or anyone. I went to bed around midnight. The bed was too firm, and the blanket felt thin, but I was tired enough to ignore it. I turned off the lights and lay there in the dark, listening to the building settle. After a few minutes, I finally started drifting towards sleep. That's when I heard it. A soft sound from the hallway outside the apartment door. Something like a footstep, slow and controlled. Then another, and another. I told myself someone else must live on this floor. Maybe they were coming home late. Maybe they were just walking around. But the footsteps stopped right in front of my door. My body froze. I held my breath and listened. For a long time, nothing happened. No movement. No footsteps. Just silence. Then, I heard the softest scrape, like someone dragging their fingernails lightly down the door. I forced myself not to move. My eyes were open now, staring at the ceiling even though I could barely see anything. The scraping sound stopped. The hallway went silent again. After a minute, I heard the sound of retreating footsteps. Slow, uneven, like the person was limping or dragging one foot slightly. The sound moved down the hallway and faded. I stayed awake after that, listening, waiting, trying to calm my breathing. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I fell asleep. In the morning, I opened the door to check the hallway. On the lower half of the door, where all the scratches were, some of them looked fresh. Not brand new, but newer than the others, like someone had added to them in the night. I told myself it could have been there before and I just didn't notice. But the feeling wouldn't leave my stomach. Something was wrong with the place. I tried to spend the whole day outside. I worked in a cafe, walked around town, and only returned to the apartment after sunset. When I got back, the hallway was even darker than before because one of the ceiling lights had burnt out. The air felt colder, too, like the whole building lost heat when the sun went down. Inside the apartment, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The balcony door was unlocked. I knew I locked it. I double-checked it the night before because of the crack in the glass. It made me nervous, and I hadn't used the balcony since. But now the lock was pushed up, and the door was open just a few centimeters. Not wide, but enough. The empty lot outside looked darker than usual. The garages looked like black boxes with no depth. I locked the door again. This time I pulled on it twice to make sure. I ate dinner without appetite, kept the lights on, and tried to watch something on my phone to distract myself. Every little noise in the apartment made my nerves jump. The wind outside sounded too strong. The old window frames rattled now and then. The fridge made a long, deep buzzing sound that wouldn't stop. At around 11 p.m., I heard something from the balcony, not from outside, from the apartment side of the glass. A soft tap, then another tap, then a slow dragging sound across the cracked glass. My whole body tensed. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe for a moment. The sound was too controlled to be wind. It was too steady to be random. I sat on the bed, staring at the balcony door. The curtain moved slightly, but I couldn't tell if it was the heater or something else. After a long moment, the tapping stopped. But then I heard something worse. Breathing, soft but clear, right on the other side of the glass. That was enough. I grabbed my bag, my jacket, my keys, and walked straight to the door. I didn't bother folding anything or checking the bathroom. I didn't want to stay another second. When I reached the apartment door, I froze. Under the door, in the small gap near the floor, I could see shadows moving. Not one shadow, two, like someone standing there, shifting their feet slightly, waiting. My chest tightened. I backed away slowly, trying not to make noise. I looked around quickly and saw the only other exit, the balcony. As much as I didn't want to go near it, the hallway felt worse. I walked to the balcony door, unlocked it, opened it, and stepped outside. The night air was cold and sharp. The empty lot below me felt endless. I climbed over the railing carefully and dropped down onto the narrow metal stairs attached to the side of the building. My hands shook as I held the railing. I didn't look back at the balcony window, even when I heard something inside the apartment move. I took the stairs down fast but quietly, reached the ground, and walked quickly across the lot. The garages were even darker up close. Every step I took felt like something was behind me. When I reached my car, I got in and locked the doors immediately. Before driving away, I looked up at the apartment. The curtain on the balcony window shifted, not from wind, from someone pulling it slightly to the side. I drove away without stopping. I didn't care about the refund, the review, or anything else. I just wanted to be far from that place. The next day, when I searched the listing, it was still there. But the host had changed all the photos. No balcony, no cracked window, no reviews. Like the place I stayed in wasn't even the same apartment anymore. I still think about the breathing sometimes, the tapping, the shadows under the door. Whoever was in that building wasn't trying to scare me. They were waiting for a moment when I wasn't paying attention. And I left just before they got it. I booked the Airbnb because it was cheap, close to the highway, and had good reviews. I had been driving for almost 10 hours that day, and my eyes felt heavy the whole time. I didn't care about anything except having a place to lie down and breathe. When I pulled up to the house, the sky was already turning dark, that deep blue shade that always makes everything look colder than it actually is. The house looked normal from the outside, just a one-story home with a small front porch and a dirt driveway. Nothing about it felt strange in that first moment. When I stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't bad exactly, just old, like the place hadn't had fresh air inside for weeks. The air felt a bit heavy, and I could feel a slight dryness in my throat right away. The living room was small and simple, with a couch that looked like it had been there for at least 10 years, and a coffee table with some scratches across the top. There were no photos of anyone on the walls, no personal things, nothing that showed who owned the place. It felt more like a temporary setup, like no one really lived there full-time. The bedroom was the last room at the end of a narrow hallway. The bed looked clean, and the sheets felt cool when I touched them. I put my bags down and tried to settle, but something in my body felt off. Maybe it was the long drive or the silence of the house. It was the type of silence where you can hear your own heartbeat and even the sound of your breath. I walked around the place to check everything. The windows were shut tight, even though the air inside felt stale. The back door had two locks that didn't match each other, almost like someone added the second one later. I tried to relax on the couch for a while, scrolling through my phone, but I kept feeling like there was movement somewhere farther in the house. Not the dramatic kind, just tiny things. A faint sound, like something lightly brushing a wall. A soft thud that didn't fit with the house settling. I kept telling myself I was tired and letting my mind create things that weren't there. But my body still felt tense. Later that night, I got ready to sleep. The bedroom didn't have curtains, only blinds that rattled whenever the air from the hallway moved. I checked the hallway again before turning off the light. It felt unusually dark, even though there was a small ceiling light above. The shadows didn't fall the way I expected them to. I shook the feeling off and forced myself to get into bed. I lay there for a long time, trying not to think about the strange silence, trying to breathe slowly and settle into the mattress. My mind kept drifting in and out, like I wasn't fully asleep but not fully awake either. At some point, I heard something somewhere inside the house. It wasn't loud, but it was clear enough that it woke me completely. It sounded like something lightly scraping against the floor. Just one short drag, then silence again. I stayed still in the bed, staring at the ceiling. The darkness felt thicker somehow, like it pressed against my skin. I tried to listen carefully, and for a long time, I heard nothing except the ticking sound of the clock on the wall. I convinced myself it might have been a branch outside rubbing against the siding. Around maybe 2 in the morning, I woke up again to a different sound. This time it was sharper, like a faint click, the kind you hear when someone touches a metal lock. The back door had 2 locks. The memory of it hit me suddenly. I hadn't touched either of them since arrival. I listened harder, barely breathing. The clicking sound came again, soft but real. I felt a cold wave move through my body. My hands were sweating without me even realizing it. I slowly got out of the bed and stepped onto the floor. The wood was cold under my feet. I walked to the bedroom door and stopped, feeling the stillness on the other side. The hallway looked darker than it had before, almost like the shadows had grown thicker. I moved carefully, trying to keep my steps light so the floor wouldn't creak too much. When I reached the living room, the air felt colder there, almost like a window had been opened. I checked, but all the windows were still locked. When I reached the back door, something hit me immediately. The top lock was open. The bottom one was still shut. I knew for a fact that both were locked when I arrived. I stared at the lock for what felt like a minute straight, my heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. Someone had opened it from the inside. That thought alone made every hair on my arms stand up. I checked the kitchen, then the small laundry room, then the bathroom. All of them were empty, but the house still felt wrong. It felt like someone had been there recently, even if I couldn't see anyone. I went back to the bedroom because I didn't know what else to do. I locked the door from the inside, even though the lock felt loose, like it hadn't been tightened in years. I pushed a chair against the door too, just to make myself feel a little safer. I lay back down, but I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I kept staring at the ceiling, waiting for another sound. Another hint that someone else was inside. Maybe an hour passed before I heard something again. This time it wasn't coming from the back door. It was coming from the attic. A slow, steady shift of weight, like someone crawling or dragging something lightly across the boards above me. The attic entrance was in the hallway, but I hadn't noticed it earlier because it blended into the ceiling. My chest felt tight as I realized something else. There was a thin layer of dust on the floor in the hallway, the kind you can see footprints in. I remembered that because it had seemed odd when I first arrived. If someone had come down from the attic at any point, I would have seen footprints. But I hadn't. The sound above me stopped suddenly, and the silence that followed felt even heavier. I felt like the air was pressing down on me. I wanted to leave right then, but the idea of opening the bedroom door and stepping into that hallway felt even worse than staying where I was. So I waited and waited. The hours dragged on in slow motion. Around dawn, when the light outside finally started to brighten the edges of the blinds, I decided I couldn't stay another second. I moved the chair away carefully, turned the lock slowly, and opened the door. The hallway looked empty, but something caught my eye right away. There was a faint mark on the floor near the attic entrance. A small streak, like something had been dragged lightly. It wasn't there before. The attic door was slightly open too, just a crack, but enough to show that it had been moved. I didn't look inside. I didn't want to know what was up there or who had been moving around above me while I slept. I walked straight to the front door, grabbed my bags, and stepped outside. The cold morning air felt like the first clean breath I had taken since arriving. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove away as fast as I safely could. When I checked my phone later, after stopping at a gas station far from the place, I saw a message from the host. It said they hoped I enjoyed my stay and asked if everything was okay because the cleaner reported the back door unlocked and the attic door open when they arrived after I checked out. They said no one else had access except me and them. I didn't bother replying. I didn't want to think about it anymore. Ending clear and detailed. To this day, I still don't know if someone was living in the attic or if someone entered the house while I was inside. All I know is that I heard footsteps above me during the night, the lock had been opened, and the attic door had been moved. Those things didn't happen on their own. Something real and dangerous was inside that house with me. I've stayed in many places while traveling, but I have never booked another Airbnb since that night. Every time I try to sleep somewhere new, I find myself checking every lock twice, then checking the ceilings and looking for signs of hidden spaces. That night taught me something that still sticks with me. The scariest things aren't ghosts or monsters. They're the people you don't see. The ones who move quietly, the ones who watch, the ones who wait in dark spaces you don't even think to check. And after that experience, I know exactly how real that danger can be.